allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome to the organizational meeting of the Southampton Town Trustees here at beautiful Town Hall, January 9th, 2023. Let's start with the roll call.
President Scott Horowitz.
I'm here.
William Pell, Secretary, present. William J. Warner, Jr.
Ed Warner?
Ed Warner. Sorry.
I'm here.
That's your cousin.
Ann Walker.
Uncle Bill.
Here.
William Parrish.
Present.
All right, we have a quorum. I'd like to welcome anybody that's watching to the video conferencing portal of Zoom. I would like to make the announcement that our next regular work session will be Monday, January 23rd at 9:30 a.m. here at Town Hall, followed by our regular meeting at 1 o'clock. For anybody that needs to attend that. Next item on the agenda is the nomination of board officers.
Can you hand it over to me?
I could hand that over to the Secretary Treasurer.
I'd like to open the nominations for the President of Southampton Town Trustees for the Board of 2023.
I'd like to nominate Scott Horowitz as president.
Second.
You good?
Oh, yep,
All in
good.
favor?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. I'd like to open the nominations for Secretary Treasurer for the year of 2023.
I'd like to nominate Bill Pell.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Yep.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, thank you for
So
the vote.
moved.
Thank you for the vote of
Thank you.
confidence. Let's just, this board made a lot of progress in 2022. Let's just keep that ball rolling for 2023. I think we got a great head of steam. So let's just keep right on moving here. Next is communications. We do have some letters. I'll dispense with reading the letters. I know you've all gotten them in your packets, so I'd like to make a motion to dispense with the reading of those communications.
Second on
This
that,
time
Scott.
seconded, and you, Warner. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Announcement, 2023 grace period for enforcement of permits. There will be a grace period for enforcement of permits licenses that expired on December 31st, 2022. It's going to go into effect until January 15th, 2023. Getting our systems up and running, town-wide at times takes a little bit when you transition into a new year. So we're going to have a little grace there, and if they is still an issue beyond that point, then we'll make another extension. But they say that
Yeah, I know some of the commercial baymen have asked for this because of the inability for them to get their state permits in the mail. Some of them, a couple of them actually went up to the offices, the new office at DEC, and got their permits in person. So it has been a problem in the past, and we've done this, so I think it's a good practice.
that's what we're going to do. So we'll let it roll. If
Yep.
there's further complications with the systems, we'll, perhaps, we'll make obviously another courtesy to keep everything going smooth, but that's fine. We do have a couple of discussions on 2023 trustee area designation and 2023 legislative liaison
James,
assignments.
can you pull up the map and
The assignments?
the map first?
I don't foresee any changes. Everybody seems to be settling in. What I would say relative to trustee assignments is that, it takes quite a bit of time to settle into an area that you're responsible for constituent service. I mean, obviously, all the trustees work throughout the township. We're not districted per se. However, for constituent service and for, working on certain projects and shepherding things through, there are areas that we have as a responsibility, and I think that seems to be working fairly well. I don't know if anyone has any commentary on that, Ann?
My only question would be, at some point, might it not be prudent to do a little shuffling of the deck chairs? Not necessarily now, but just so that everyone is familiar with different areas. And I understand that it takes a while to get up to speed, but just putting that out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good thought, and that's why I think that the trustees, I know myself, I'm traveling throughout the entire town as the president and looking at various different things. And I think that, everybody has to take that initiative to do that. We could give that some thought. But I do also see a value in maintaining the continuity for the public and for the trustee to really become, very skilled in their area. Proficient is a word that comes to forefront. So that's certainly something we can talk about, though, moving forward. If anybody else has any thoughts on this?
Good.
You good? Mr. Parrish, good?
No, I mean, when I first became a trustee, I had two areas because Scott Stroud was leaving. I had your area, Scott, and my area both, so I'm pretty well
Well,
versed.
being a Bayman, I think
I'm
you...
pretty well versed the whole town, but, yeah, but it is good. It gives some confidence in the people that you oversee the area, that they know when they call you that you're gonna get back to them, and they feel comfortable bringing issues forward to you. So, on that end of it, shuffling around, people might feel a little more standoffish to contact a new person in the area.
Yeah, I
But they
mean-
shouldn't, because
Well-
we're all doing work for them.
Right, and the trustees, in general, need to take the initiative to learn the entire town, because you're voting on things throughout the entire town, projects and
Correct.
and various different things, so you really need to take, but there is a certain benefit to the continuity, to the elected official in the area and to the public in having that consistency there. So, but we can certainly examine this more. It's always good to take a look at these things, and I appreciate the commentary. Any further discussion on this designation? No. The next thing is the legislative liaison assignments. Everybody just, was acting as point people to certain things, and then we would be collaborating among the board. You can't be everywhere. And I think that, quite frankly, I think the board performed terrifically through 2022, and the proof was in the results that we got in really resolving a lot of issues and getting things done. So, part of me is kind of like, well, if it's not broken, let's not fix it. So I don't know what you have thoughts on.
No, I think it worked well. I mean, during COVID and everything, getting projects done with outside agencies was a challenge. Many of us have made new friends in that end of the spectrum as far as people to contact and talk to. But, I think we didn't miss a beat through the whole COVID, issue, and being it's still going on, we're still working hard in our office and making sure it's safe for everybody. And I think as a board and what we've accomplished in the last couple of years has been a really phenomenal, well done for our board, so.
I think so.
Is there anything that needs to be added to this list as we're looking at the list? Is there anything that we're missing here, or?
I think right out of the gate, I think it's okay. We could, as we go forward, we could certainly add things as we move forward. But I think looking at it right out of the gate, I think it's okay.
I noticed that both Scott and I have quag.
Well, it's kind of
It's
split.
overlap.
Yeah, there's overlap in the area.
It's like that in Flanders, too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's areas where it divides because the area just gets too big, so.
In Hampton Bays too, we split.
And Hampton Bays also, so there's a dividing line that there is, so you're gonna see that in Hampton Bays, you're gonna see that in Quogue, you're gonna see that in a couple places, unavoidable. So they know, and this, like James Duryea, our environmental analyst, he knows what addresses are going to which, and then obviously, as you're aware, we all work on stuff, you need me to pop in on something, I'm there for you,
Our GIS system has the line exact.
Right.
So if you can't tell on that map, we have the ability to zoom in to each property and see where that line
Right.
is.
It's spelled out pretty well. So we good with that?
Yes.
We're good with that. I see we have Assistant Town Attorney Sean Cambridge here, who was working with the town board on, and I'd like to invite you up. He was working with the Board of Trustees and the town board on getting a higher limit on our fines and protecting our resources like our shellfish. And I know we were working back and forth, and getting the wording correct is also a very important part of the equation. And I want to give you the floor. Sean
Thank you,
Cambridge, Assistant
Scott.
Town Attorney.
I appreciate it. So we have a draft that's pending before the town board for January 24th. Based on input, we had a meeting, President Horowitz and myself, and Trustee Parrish and myself looked at this draft. essentially, what we're looking to do is simplify this section of the law. I've handed each of you the proposed amendments, the law as it sits today, and Section 130 of the New York State Town Law, each in a packet, so you can all follow along. Essentially, we've proposed a couple things here. If you want to follow along on that first sheet that says 278-1, shellfish permit required. Essentially, the underwater title to land is vested with the trustees. It is your right to set regulations, time, manner, place, limits, so on and so forth. What we've done is we've taken those regulation elements out of the town code section. So essentially what had been done in the past is the town board just simply adopted a section of the Blue Book that had specific limits within it. That's problematic because although you may change your Blue Book regulations, the town board still has adopted the prior draft of a prior board, presumably. So the draft that's on the books right now is from the 80s. So some of the things that you have updated since 1984 are not reflected within the bounds of the town code. So what we've done is we've simplified the elements. So the analysis for a bay constable is going to be much easier. Subsection A, it shall be unlawful for any person to take, control, remove, disturb, or otherwise possess any shellfish, essentially without a valid permit. I put the emphasis on the word valid. You had essentially a defense built in to these charges that anyone with a permit at any time could walk into court and say, I have a permit, even if it's expired. We don't want that, obviously. That's a loophole, and we're looking to close that loop today. So the word valid permit is essential. The act and the most frequent offenders that we're seeing, that provision is going to encompass. It's people shellfishing without a permit. That's the #1 priority here. Jumping around a little bit, that's why we're looking at the penalty section. We are looking to raise the penalties here to the maximum that we're allowed under New York State Town Law, which is increasing up to $1,000 for a violation level offense. From there, we have those people that have a permit but are going outside of the bounds of that permit. So Section B is going to be a prohibition on people that are taking beyond limits, beyond the time frame, so beyond the season that you specified. Section C is going to be taking with a tool or implement other than what you've specified. So if you say it's going to be a certain kind of rake, a certain mechanism, and someone is not following the bounds of their permit, this section exists to charge them. Section D is going to be to preserve your right to set management zones. So if you want to temporarily close an area to protect the shellfish population, this is a right that you've already had established. This is making it very clear, as I don't believe the old section did. So this expressly says if the trustees designate a management zone, you're not allowed to fish there. Plain and simple. Part of the issue is the old section is very wordy. People that are engaging in illegal shellfishing are not necessarily going to understand what they're reading in the town code. What we're looking to do is to have the charging elements specified within the town code, and for this board to set the rules, regulations, time, manner, place, and mechanism for shellfishing. So you're going to determine all of the details, essentially. The bay constables and the town will have the simple task of enforcing. Lastly, 278.3. Penalties. Like I said, we've increased the penalties. And then we move into 278.4 amendments. So this section, in an initial draft, President Horowitz had expressed he'd like this to remain. What it does, Section A, is the town board shall not amend this chapter without obtaining prior written expression of the Board of Trustees. This creates a notice requirement for the town board to notice the Board of Trustees if they're considering amending this chapter. The trustees shall furnish the town board with a recommendation within 60 days, and it says failure to make a recommendation within 60 days shall be deemed as an approval of the Board of Trustees, not the town board. The town board would still have to vote. So essentially, if you don't vote, if you don't write an expression, it would be deemed an approval. I don't see why you would do that. This board is quite expressive. In this instance, you issued a letter of support for changing this section. And again, this is exactly what the law on the books now says. This is the process that I believe Councilman Jim Malone had enacted when he was on the town board in conjunction with the then sitting Board of Trustees. So pursuant to this board's request, this was left in this draft. Sub B of this provision is upon receipt by the town board of a written recommendation of the trustees, the town board has to schedule a public hearing and notify you when that public hearing is going to be. Again, section 130 of the town law does not expressly make the town board notify this board of any public hearing. This section does that. That accomplishes. The town board is obligated to notice you of a public hearing. So this is something you probably do want to keep in here because town law section 130 is not creating that burden to notify. That being said, I've also provided everybody with a draft of town law section 130, and we'll flip to that. So on the first page, is everybody ready? So it states the town board, after a public hearing, may enact, amend, repeal ordinances, rules, regulations not inconsistent with law for the following purposes, in addition to such other purposes as may be contemplated by the provisions of this chapter or other laws. I've tabbed one of the back pages of your packet, section 18, which applies to trustees of freeholders, not just yourselves, but in other municipalities as well. This specifies the town board, with a writing produced by the trustees in sub 2 here, may regulate the taking, manner of taking, of shellfish from underwater lands. If you look down, subsections 1 through 6 are essentially the things we are regulating in this section, whether you have a permit or not, whether you're at the right time and limits, and whether you're in the right place, essentially, a management zone. So that's what this section of the law applies to. The time, manner, place, and mechanisms are what the town is able to regulate. Everything else, permit requirements, who qualifies for a permit, what time, what place, what season, what mechanism, that's on your board. So that's what this proposed amendment does. This is before the town board, January 24th at 1 p.m. for a public hearing. I'd encourage you all to submit a written comment in addition to the letter of support that you've issued if you feel necessary, or to appear and speak in favor or against the proposed amendment if you're inclined to do so.
Is there any questions for Sean? Is there any further?
I have a question. Perhaps, I'm not sure if this is something that can be addressed at this point, but it is something that needs to be addressed.
Okay.
So, the biggest problem we have, or one of the biggest problems with taking or poaching, is with blue claw crabs. However, this is shellfish specific. Nowhere in here does it say anything about blue claws. So how do we go about including the crabs in here? Because right now you have to crab under a shellfish permit,
Okay.
but there's nothing in here that says specifically crab.
Okay,
So-
so that would be as easy as the next time you go and update the rules and regs for taking, A340, the trustees blue book, you can define blue claws as shellfish within that permit definition of what is requiring a permit.
I think does 278.2 already do that? Shellfish includes oysters, scallops, hard clams, soft clams, razor clams, crabs, which I would assume would include blue claw.
Good catch from my
Yes, it
colleague
does.
there.
Thank you.
We did
Sure.
stick that in there.
Good.
It does.
But you
Should
could,
it specifically say blue claw crabs, though?
you can
It
do that
is
within your
crab
rules
covers?
for management, if you're so inclined. I do feel it is covered.
Nope, okay.
But the intent of this is, again, for this board to regulate the specifics. You have your own definition section. You have your own regulations. This is just an enabling statute for a bay constable to write somebody a ticket.
Okay.
Saying crabs is probably better because it encompasses all crabs, right? Versus just, because then you get horseshoe crab,
No, no, that's
whatever.
fine.
No, it's horseshoe crabs, green crabs.
Yep, no, that's
You got, yeah, so you're better off with crabs.
good.
But I do know when the state recognizes a shellfish species, they usually have the Latin name next to it too, for clarification.
Right.
So we're saying
Well,
crabs.
so this is for the purposes of, so say I am Mr. Unlicensed Shellfish, catcher here. I get a ticket, I end up in justice court. Do we really want the lawyers determining, hey, this is this kind of crab and this is that kind of crab? And no, it's the trustees board determined what kind of crab you can or can't take. We've alleged you can't take this, that's why you're in court. I only need to prove it's a crab, not what kind of crab it is, right?
You also have specific limitations and specific.
You should probably, if you're gonna speak, Joe, you gotta speak from the place. You can't speak from there. Thanks.
Because Charlie be yelling at you.
I'm yelling at you before Charlie steps in.
Yeah, no problem. Joseph Lombardo, Special Counsel. You already regulate the size of the blue claws, the sex of the blue claws. There's enough specificity in the blue book, I believe, to go
Satisfied?
along with what Sean is saying. I have only one concern about the draft, but I'll hold off to that.
Okay. Any further questions?
No, I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
Okay.
The only concern.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want
Thank
to
you.
thank Sean, he did a good job, and the only concern I have with the draft there is the default provision. Town law gives you the exclusive right to recommend any ordinance to the town board, since you exist as a separate and independent entity. If you don't respond within 60 days, it's deemed adopted. I really have an issue with that, because if you're recommending it and if there is a disagreement or something, you have to chime in. You can't just sit back on your hands and let the town board enact something. You have to maintain that distinction and that delineation between the boards.
Respond to that point.
Sure.
So, I initially didn't really like this provision. You, President Horowitz, asked me to put this in. And in researching, I actually think it's pretty crafty, what the prior town board and prior board of trustees did. So we're not able to allow a non-municipal board to bind a municipal board. What this has done is created a notice requirement, essentially a delay period, for this board to file a writing, and forcing a public hearing from the town board. So the town board would have to follow its own law. We can't allow this board or any other board to block the town board, but this creates a mechanism to essentially delay that process. As you know, the town code is controlled by the town board. It's specifically within section 130 of the town law. And this board exclusively controls the rights to regulate shellfishing. So those things have to intermingle in some fashion. This is a pretty slick code addition by these predecessors of both of ours, that builds in a notice requirement that you otherwise would not have under section of Town Law 130. So by eliminating it, yes, the law controls, yes, we need a writing, yes, we've done that in this instance, but you're getting rid of all these notice requirements, and you're essentially taking away procedures that could delay action of the town board, where you otherwise would not have a right to those procedures. So I think it is probably smart to leave this in. I think it's kind of a backdoor to the process that would regularly be followed. It builds in an extra 60 days. And I don't see why this board wouldn't opine if notice is given.
Well, the fact of the matter is that my understanding that the provision that currently exists in the code was authored by a town councilman who was an attorney. And I think had he looked at 130 subdivision 18's2, the trustees of the freeholders are the ones that are to initiate this, not the town board unilaterally. And it's a separate board, but I believe that provision allows the intermingling of our board, the trustees, with your board, the town board. It's granting the authority to enact legislation. And it specifically says in subdivision 1, town vested with title to.
this town is not vested with title to. So that's why you need to have that recognition for the future. In 10 years or 15 years, you get a board that isn't aware of subdivision 130 subdivision 18, that they can't tread on this board's toes, and vice versa. We can't order you to do anything. We can request it.
Well, to respond to that, so provision 1 of section 18 does have the word "or" at the end. And then it leads to provision 2, or the trustees or freeholders in commonality of a town in which trustees are vested with title to such lands, and the right of fishing, provided that such trustees shall file with the town clerk an application in writing therefore. So this section of law says that the town board needs your application in writing to amend this section of the town code. That being said, we can't explicitly block the town board from changing the town code in general. So I believe this notice provision is what Councilman Malone had crafted as a way of building in notice that does not exist. I don't think it harms. I don't think, by failing to print, a section of law within a law, it doesn't really make sense. You're not losing anything. This law still does control, and you have a built-in notice requirement that was crafted, like I said, I think in a smart way to preserve that ability for this board to have notice and participate in a public hearing.
I would respectfully submit that you don't need that provision to increase the fines or to enforce the code. Striking that language with the 60-day silence equals adoption provision will not harm or hamper your ability to enforce the code. And again, I respectfully submit this board needs to maintain a separate identity and independence because we are not a department of the town government, as a lot of people mistakenly believe. So if you can leave it in and achieve all of your goals and desires, both boards, I would respectfully ask you to ask the board to keep that to take that language out of the town code.
Well,
Which specific language? Because
The silence and 60-day adoption.
but the rest of it you're fine with.
Absolutely,
It's just the silence
I
and 60
applaud
days.
the effort that he did, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
The notifications, this is again another area where the town of Southampton is a unique town. And there's a system of checks and balances that are built in for a purpose, and that you've seen this, started in, times, predating the formation of the country, dating back to colonial era patents and all this.
Predating New York.
Correct. But you see where there's such an importance in modern day times that the framework exists.
Yes.
And that's why, as president of the board, I'm always very sensitive to the fact of a couple of things. One, there has to be a respect for the authority and jurisdiction of each of the boards, because in reality, for the town to function appropriately, we need each other. And we have to learn how we dance, but we don't step on each other's toes. Now, the devil's in the details, apparently, in this wording,
Right.
And I, there's valid points, all over the place. I think a board that had 60 days notice of a requested change by another board that doesn't take an action, I think is remiss in their responsibilities, so that's,
Right.
like what examples could there be that, oh my God, we have to make a change to protect whatever, but this board is not reacting or acting. So, that being said, again, the wording is important. I think that we're all trying to accomplish increasing the penalties and protecting the resources of the town. I think that with the lawsuits and the challenges that occur, everybody gets very sensitive to the wording in these things. So my question is, the president of the board is, how do we accomplish checking all the boxes here? How do we do that and still have the two boards in lockstep doing what the people expect us to do? Protect the resources, deter people from breaking our rules and regulations, preserving the authority and the jurisdiction of the trustees, okay? How do we satisfy all of this?
so if I may respond.
And I'll
This
ask for time
paragraph
after.
essentially doesn't work without that sentence. Like I said early, this board or any other board can't bind the town board can't bind you. We need to really have faith in all members of both boards that are working together. That's the way the law is structured. They have certain abilities. under the law to enforce, you have certain abilities to set the rules and regs here. So without both of those parts working, neither works. You essentially, have that problem of this board binding that board if you eliminate some of this language, in my opinion. So I'd recommend against it. Like I said, it's before the town board. This is the draft that's proceeded based upon recommendation of this board. At this point, any recommendation would have to take place.
But hold on, I think, let's just wait until he comes back, because that's really not fair for him to be leaving.
Of course.
Yeah, and he's representing us on this too. Don't you agree, Scott?
Well,
We want the board to have counsel.
I mean, I get it, but I got special counsel
Yeah.
here, and then I've got,
We should have all three.
Yeah, they're gonna make decisions on this.
Yeah, they're gonna make decisions on it, and that's very unfair for her to do that. Right in the middle of a conversation.
okay. So, this is where we go
Sean,
to
can you
commercial break?
step and see how long?
Sure.
she's
This is
holding
where we
up
go
meeting?
for the commercial break?
Yeah.
Huh? Okay. You have something that you want to say?
Yes.
To the board?
You are trustees and you are charged with protecting the assets of the trust. All of this relates to assets of the trust. For the board to remain silent for 60 days like that could be construed as nonfeasance. You have an affirmative duty to act. There shouldn't be an escape clause that, well, if we keep our mouth shut, it'll just be adopted. You're trustees, you have to act as trustees.
Correct. So what's the, this board, as Assistant Town Attorney Cambridge points out, this board has been very vocal, okay, at, protecting in defense of what's going on. And the concern is about future boards, right?
Absolutely.
Future boards. So how do, again, how do we check all of these boxes and where it's, like, everybody can, work together on protecting natural resources?
Town law is clear. You're vested with the power and the authority to request the town board to act. Whether or not they act, that does not bind on your request, correct? Okay. You're upholding your end of the deal by making the request. The town can enact the ordinance at your request to protect the assets of the trust. If you've requested it, there'll be no further need for you to give any more affirmation to the acts of the town board. You initiated the contact, you initiated the request. But that silence could be construed as nonfeasance, and a trustee is required to act,
Right, so.
one way or the other.
Right, but, correct, that's true. So,
We
with
can
that,
change the word that you have to act within 60 days.
Well, if I can respond. So you, with this draft, are able to change your rules and regulations for management. This whole section relies on that. So you can change your laws, your regulations. You can say no shellfish are allowed to be taken until we can iron this out with the town board. Again, I think you're eliminating a notice requirement that you otherwise would not have the benefit of. You're not going to be able to bind the town board, no matter what way you craft it. You simply can't do it under town law. So I recommend you leave it in place, that you act with diligence, and again, eliminating the procedures leaves things up to the interpretation of a judge in litigation, where you explicitly have a process outlined that's been on the books. If the town board fails to take action on this, everything in this section remains as it is, where I'd say 90% of it is changed in a way to enforce a justice court, and this is a notice requirement that was left alone, essentially.
say, I mean, there's a lot of examples that may come into play, and again, I'm not an attorney, and I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. So,
You sure?
The bottom line is, there may be examples on the enforcement side of it where changes have to be made because there's some other extenuating circumstance. I don't know. It's like two different things, that are going on that have to work together. The notice requirement, I think, is important so that people just don't go running off
Right.
and making these changes. And they're sending a wake up to a future board to say, hey, here's what's going on, this is what we need to do. And then they can step up and say, listen, town law says this, we're responsible for that. we agree, we disagree, whatever, without a notice requirement, I don't know what's gonna happen 15, 20 years from now. You know, other people sitting here, you know what I mean? It's,
Sean, by the way, I didn't get a copy of what you gave them. Can I just see the draft?
I think Jessica has one for you.
Oh,
So, Sean, this is the
I'm
way,
sitting here.
this is the way the law is currently written, right?
Right, I handed out the way it's
And-
currently
and
written.
this is the way
The
we've been
proposal.
doing business for 16 years that I've been on the board, because I haven't been here since the 80s.
Correct.
So, and have we come across, Joe, do you know of any instances where, as it is written, it has been problematic towards us?
Absolutely.
No.
Yes.
There've been very few changes in this. In fact, that change of 278 was a result of your board wanting an increase in fines.
Yes.
So,
Well, if I may, I am the prosecutor for the town, and I deal with people every single week in court without permits. There are full calendars full of people engaged in this activity, and essentially none of them end up litigating because we offer them a plea bargain with a pretty minimal fine and water quality surcharge of $100 based upon the guidelines as written. And every week, there's a full calendar full of people doing this. So we've increased the fines to the maximum allowed by law in this proposal. And we've crafted this in such a way to where if we have to litigate, we don't have defenses that people can just throw out there and get away with, like having a permit that's expired. That we can actually litigate and successfully convict somebody of this ordinance based on a lack of a permit or the guidelines specified within this board's permit. So that's the goal here. We're looking to, you know, as we increase fines, people are going to want to litigate more. They're not just going to come in and take a plea. So that's the way to do this, in my opinion. If there are no further questions, I recommend you speak with your counsel and special counsel. And again, if you have any opinion other than what was filed with the town board, I'd encourage you to file that for January 24th or come and speak personally, okay?
Thank you
Would
very
the,
much.
would the trustees be okay if the last sentence, instead of reading failure to make such recommendation within such 60-day period, instead of it saying shall be deemed as approval, said something like shall result in the town board taking action as it deems
I
appropriate?
would have a big objection with it. And that's the objection that I'm here complaining about. If you read the first part of A, it's basically an acknowledgement of 130, Section 18, Subdivision 2.
Well, I mean, we're going to have to agree to disagree, but
Okay, but-
if the board has nothing further for me, I'll see my way out of
Well-
here and.
does the board have any further questions for Assistant Town Attorney Sean Cambridge before we let him go?
Not at this time.
Not at this time.
Thank you
Okay.
very
Thank
much.
you
Sean,
very much.
Sean, thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
You know,
Greatly
thank you for
appreciate.
the diligent work on this.
You know,
Sean.
you
Thank you all.
did yeoman's effort on this, and this is the only sticking point I have out of an otherwise exemplary.
Sean, this is not as easy, you know, this is not as easy as it all appears, because you're trying to protect all the historical record of everything, because it does have effects on modern day times. So we got some talented people here working on some solutions, and generally, when you professionally go through this exercise, you end up with better decisions. So,
Thank you.
so,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
all right, you have some further point here?
No, I am ready to, anytime somebody wants to talk with me about it, or
It's
talk
a
to
discussion,
Sean,
I
we can-
appreciate
but-
the board has, you know, got a good bunch of information here, and we'll continue to,
Well, I recommend that each one of the trustees meet with special counsel Labardo to go over his concerns and to address.
sure.
I'm ready whenever anyone.
Yeah, it's a
Changes.
dis-
Thank
it's a-
you, Joe.
It's a discussion, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so public portion, we have, is there anybody on Zoom? Because I don't see, I know you're here for a specific reason. No one on Zoom? What'd you say?
No one's on Zoom.
Okay.
Can I make a recommendation that we take the out of order so that we can Mr. Carrington out of here?
You'd like to make that,
I'll second that.
Okay,
I'd
so-
like to make a recommendation that we take the
223.15?
agenda out of 223.15 out of order.
okay,
I'll
so,
second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we're gonna take 223.15 out of order. I believe that's what he's here for. This was a.
Page 18.
Yeah, this is a resolution about the notice of a public hearing on amendment of rules and regulations for the management of products of the town waters, considering amending the management and products, Article 7, Section 47, Basically, the legislative intent of this was the Board of Trustees for the Town of Southampton desires to update the rules and regulations for management products to require that initial design drawings and plans submitted with permit applications do not need to show the original stamp or seal of a New York State licensed design professional, but the final ones do at the final work session prior to being able to go to resolution. I do see we have Floyd Carrington, licensed surveyor for many years here in the audience, that I think wants to provide some information to the board on this, and I would like to give Mr. Carrington the floor.
Scott, there's a public hearing on the 23rd for this, so I don't.
Yeah, I mean, you want him to come back, or?
Yeah, he should.
I think that would be most appropriate, right?
Okay.
Because it's a public hearing that you're gonna be opening up on the Monday of the 23rd, and if he has comments.
Yeah, you know,
It's not
it's
open
like,
yet.
that's true, you know, Floyd, I feel bad you came all the way down here, I wanted to give you the benefit of at least addressing the board.
Okay.
What's your thoughts, Mark? You came all the way down.
Yeah,
Should we hold
that's-
him
I mean,
off or let him address?
Yeah, and has the board accepted prior, I know we oftentimes hold public hearings open and we'll accept letters, and I believe we accept emails and letters prior to public hearing on the subject matter of the public hearing, do we not?
Yes.
Then I'd be happy to meet with, I'm sorry, what's your name, sir?
Floyd Carrington.
I'd be happy to give you my card.
Sure.
I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Okay.
You could also email me and the trustees as
So
well.
you want him to not speak to the board now? You
But
want him to-
now is not appropriate.
Yeah,
'cause-
you know, when you have somebody with this integrity and experience coming down to give the board some good information,
Yeah,
it's
but-
like you wanna,
but
I get it,
right.
so why don't you do that? Is it possible you'd meet with
Sure.
Mark McRedmond?
Sure.
And then even maybe schedule, or Joe, schedule, and then perhaps put on your calendar for the 23rd? Is it possible, or?
Yeah, as far as I know, yes.
Because we're gonna schedule an official public hearing with an open record for 1 o'clock on the 23rd.
Okay.
But I really appreciate, and I know the board appreciates good public input.
And if the trustees would excuse me for a moment, I'm just going to give the gentleman
Yep.
my card,
Sure.
so I don't
Okay.
hold him up. Okay, I'll be right back.
Thank you, Floyd.
Thanks, Floyd.
It was very
Nice
lucky.
seeing
I
you.
was looking for something else, and I saw this agenda thing going, what are these people talking about?
All right,
Okay, good.
perfect. All right, so we've got some applications for permits and some issues to
Did
check.
you want to vote on that one, or,
Which one?
because we took it out of order? Adopting the public hearing?
Yeah, why don't we,
You want to
Just to
vote on that one?
notice-
Yeah, let's
to
vote on
notice-
it.
Yeah, we'll
to
vote on
notice
that.
the public
Okay,
hearing.
so 2023-15, I will make the motion to set the public hearing for Monday, January 23rd.
and I will
2023.
second that, because I think it's an important process that we need to
Do.
do.
Seconded by trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that's set, and we'll have some good commentary, we already know. All right,
Then back to page 2.
yep, chugging back, we've got, Board of Trustees hereby waives a public hearing on the following applications because it has been determined that the following projects do not raise significant degree of public interest or public input is not needed to aid in the decision-making process. Trustee Warner.
Yes. We have trustee resolution 2022-349, notice of adoption of amendment of Blue Book A340, considering amending the management and products of the water of the town of Southampton by adding a new chapter, Article XIX, Aquaculture. Whereas the Board of Trustees of Freehold is commonality of the town of Southampton considered amending the rules and regulations and management of the waters of the town of Southampton by adding a new article to the established aquaculture program on the trustees' owned underwater bottom land, and being that we had a public hearing held on December 19, 2022, at 1 o'clock, Town Board Room, Town Hall, 116 Hampton Road, Southampton, New York, at which time any and all persons either for or against the amendment were heard. Now therefore it be resolved, the rules and regulations and management of the products of the waters of the town of Southampton is hereby follows as the legislative intent. Basically, it desires to update the Blue Book. Trustees of the town of Southampton desire to update the Blue Book A340 by adding an article XIX, Aquaculture, in order to establish a commercial program of aquaculture within the town waters on the bottom lands of the town by the trustees.
Second.
Seconded trustee Pell, all in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Good job, thank you, folks.
Thank you, Ed.
Excellent work, guys. Another one for you, Ed.
Yes, spanning through it here. Okay.
Page 7.
Page 7, yes, I got it. Trustee Resolution 2022-348. This was during the process of the agriculture meetings that we had prior to the public hearing. We temporarily established some sites that we thought would be a good way to start off the agriculture program by listing these sites. But some of them actually have were questionable by the college because they put some oysters and clams in these areas, and we don't want any of the gear to sit on top of the spawner sanctuaries that we've basically established. So I'd like to table this part until I could meet with GIS upstairs and our environmental analyst, James Duryea, to move some of the areas that will not be in
Second.
conflict.
Seconded, trustee Pell, all in favor?
Aye. Thank you, Scott.
Trustee Resolution 2023-1, Budget and Financing. Trustee resolution require any expenditure exceeded $1,000. Resolved that the Board of Trustees shall require any expended more than trustee exceeded at $1,000.
I'll second that, Billy.
Seconded, trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
2023-2, Budget and Finance. Authorize the purchase from Riverhead Bone Supply for the year of 2023.
I'll second that.
Seconded, trustee Warner, all in favor?
2023-3, authorize the use of digital signature for overlaying.
I'll second that.
Seconded, trustee Warner, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
2023-4, approve a third-party custodian bank.
I'll second that.
Seconded, trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
Got trustee resolution 2023-5, designation of official newspapers.
And on this resolution, we may just want to do a quick recall and amend orally, just to add the words publication of notices after newspaper for the.
Would that include notices of adoption as well, and other legal ads?
We could add, all I know is the way it's written now, hereby designated as the official newspaper, isn't specific enough as to why you're designated it.
Okay.
The town board has the same resolution on their org meeting.
Well, the next
I'm just-
resolution says for the publication notices.
Right, and I noticed that as well. It's one of the reasons I want it to be consistent. If it's
Okay.
for that purpose, it should state it.
Well, okay. So the designation, so let's amend this to include 2023-5 to say official newspapers and publication of notices?
Yes.
Official
For the
newspaper
publication.
for the publication of notices.
Okay, and that's in 2023-5. I'll make that motion.
Second?
Seconded, trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
And then on the underlying resolution, I'll make the motion.
I'll second that.
Seconded, trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, on 2023-6, designation of additional newspapers, resolved that the following newspapers are hereby designated as additional newspapers for the public notifications for the year 2023, and that would be the Independent Traveler, Watchman, and the Sag Harbor Express, the East Hampton Star Newsday, and Riverhead News Review.
I'll second that.
Seconded, trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
2023-7, Budget and Finance. Designated banks of deposit, Dime Community, JP Morgan Chase, and Bank United.
I'll second that.
Seconded, trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
2023-8, Budget and Finance. Authorize the purchase of the Armament Partner contract with Home Depot USA for the year 2023.
I'll second that.
Seconded, trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
I have trustee resolution 2023-9. It's to authorize the continuation of legal services by Sokoloff Stern LLP in Havemeyer versus the town of Southampton.
Second that.
Seconded, trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
2023-10 is to authorize the continuation of legal services by Conicon and Estro versus West Hampton Dune. This is done, but there may be just a couple of little things that got to be cleaned up on the tail end here, paperwork-wise. So I'll make the resolution.
Second.
Seconded, trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Got trustee resolution 2023-11, continuation of legal services by Joseph Lombardo, also in the same Strouby, West Hampton Dunes, just in case there are some paperwork that has to be cleaned up on the tail end.
Second.
Seconded trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
Next one's you, Jeff.
Authorize, trustee resolution 2023-12. Authorize the payment of legal services of Joe Lombardo Esquire in Rossi Family LLC versus Warner et al.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, 2023-13, under agreements, contracts, leases, authorize the continuation of retaining the professional services of Joseph Lombardo, continue to utilize his services for non-litigation matters, not limited to representation as needed pending legislation, negotiations, and trustee board meetings.
Second.
Seconded trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Trustee Resolution 2023-14, retain the professional service of Joseph Lombardo for liaison attorney for the board with transition counsel. Be ready.
Second on that?
Seconded trustee Warner, all in favor?
Question on the motion.
Sure.
So, I'm just, with all due respect, I'm just questioning perhaps whether there is not, is this necessary? And what I'm, not being an attorney, I'm just questioning, Joseph Lombardo is an attorney. So when I'm comparing, for instance, the Sokoloff Stern, their partners bill at one rate and their associates and paralegals at another. How do we explain that Mr. Lombardo is billing at one rate for his court services and then, or his litigation services, and then with these two other?
Well, he's explained it, well, they're different rates on the resolution, like this last resolution has a $65 an hour. You know, Joseph Lombardo has a lot of specific knowledge relative to the history of the trustees over a long period of time. And in the ability of having him intercede at times to get documents and explain things to Be Ready Fishbine helps them get to where they need to be a lot faster, and they will get a lot better information than folks on the board. We're also going to have input. Obviously, we're going to have an exec session later on today. But there really, in my opinion, there is a value, and I think to the point that Joseph recognizes he's not the lead on this. He's like acting as a liaison to get information. It's a substantially reduced rate, but at the end of the day should be a terrific tax savings to the trustees and the taxpayers, because he can point them in a direction a lot faster than reinventing the wheel. I don't know, he's sitting out here if you want to speak to him directly, but that's the thought process to what's going on here. We're going to be directly involved, but there is a very large bank of knowledge that can be supplied.
Plus, he's been always very, very fair on all his bills he's been sending us.
Yeah, I think we're paying for 20-plus years of institutional knowledge that he's gathered working with the trustees, past and present boards, which is, as far as I'm concerned, being a trustee for 16 years is priceless.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yes, and if I may also, the reason for the reduced rate is we're all in uncharted territory right now. There's a learning curve for all of us to have to go through. And I didn't, in good conscience, feel that a full rate charge, while I'm learning also what I'm going to be needing for the future for the board, that's the reason for the reduced rate. Again, this board has been very supportive of me, and this is kind of my way of saying thank you.
So
Thanks, Joseph.
it's not the historical knowledge that I'm questioning, it's the working as an attorney and then at the same time working as a consultant. That's what I'm concerned about. Is this,
Well, you're separating your time. I think he's billing his time, he's separating his time, and he's not charging the rates for each of these activities. I think if he's brought in as consultant, it's one rate, and if it's for consulting on the implementation of the tax district, where, as he pointed out, everybody's in uncharted territories, but there is a lot of historical information and preservation that has to happen. it's at a substantially reduced rate to get us where we need to be. I don't know if you want to address that further, that's my
Yeah.
understanding.
That was the whole purpose of why I offered the reduced rate, because I'm not going to be doing the heavy lift on this. Outside counsel will be. But I do possess knowledge that will save time for outside counsel, which will save money for you in the long run as well.
Yeah, this has to be done right, and I think that if you have members of the team that are possessing an ability to get this job done right, I think we need to do that. And this housekeeping activity is clearly spelling it out in a resolution where this individual acting at this capacity is receiving X, this capacity it's this, and then this reduced rate on this implementation.
Right, and just for information purposes also, there have been activities that I've been involved in with the transition I haven't billed you for. Because, again, we didn't know how we were going to go about this. And I'm just explaining that was also part of my reasoning for the reduced rate, because again, we're all learning on this.
It's not, as I said, it's not the billing that I'm questioning, it's the title within which. It's just confusing, perhaps. I just want to make sure that we're clear.
Well, that's why
on
we
it
passed
so
three
that-
separate resolutions to kind of clarify.
Yeah, segregate.
That's why it was done in this fashion, to segregate it, so that we, to your point, we recognize that, and that's why we're broken this down with the different resolutions for the same. Instead of lumping it all together, it's specifically broken down for the specific activities that there are.
And I'll be submitting 3 invoices conceivably every month if I'm working on something as a consultant, if I'm appearing in court on Rossi, or if I'm working with Be Ready. There'll be 3 bills at 3 separate rates. It will be transparent for the board to see exactly what I'm doing.
Would the board want to consider adding legal consultation to the Resolution 2023-13? Instead of just
non-litigation?
instead of just saying, well, non-litigation can be a very wide umbrella of legal matters that just don't involve people suing each other. And Mr. Lombardo clearly has a wealth of knowledge in a number of areas. But I noticed it's reading as a consulting agreement for an attorney who's any other time been listed as somebody providing legal services. So maybe that would satisfy the point Trustee Welker is making.
I would be open to that. I think it adds transparency and clarification, and
On 2023-13?
Yes.
Yep.
Board of Trustees would like to see what the wording is now. Utilize the services of Joseph Lombardo for non-litigation matters, including but not limited to representation as needed, pending legislation, negotiations, and trustee board meetings. So you want to add
and
what?
then-
I was going to suggest it's up to the board and Joe, but
Is this
For
on the
le-
resolution for the transition, Mark?
Which
Or-
one?
I'm
You said
looking at
13.
2022-13,
No,
2023-13.
which
it's
reads
retaining
as
U.S. services.
as
It's the prior
consulting. Authorize a continuation of retaining the professional services of Joseph Lombardo for, and instead of consulting, it could read legal consultation.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, it'd still be covering everything that we need to have them do in hiring with this resolution, right?
I'm looking at Mr. Lombardo. Is that,
Well, you already passed the consultant resolution,
that was
so
before.
We're just doing it twice now.
now you're bringing it back. You're going to have to recall it, I think.
Well, if you,
Procedurally, at least. you're
it
gonna
would have to be a recall and amend next time, but I'm just noticing the whole thing now for the first time, that it said consulting.
well,
I could look into that further for you, just to make sure you have everything dotted
I
and
know.
crossed the right way.
it says including but not limited to, so,
Yeah.
I don't think it's inappropriate. You just,
Oh, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just wondering, you've already passed that resolution.
Right,
If
but
the
what
question
I'm
was
saying
on
is
the other
that-
one, on the transition,
it wouldn't preclude him from having a legal consultation, right, Mark, based on the wording that's there now?
Yeah, I guess the question, and this I don't know the answer to, and I'd have to look into it, and Joe may very well know it, but again, I was trying to address Trustee Welker's initial point. can an attorney who's hired on matters for legal services as an attorney also be hired for non-legal consultation by the same board, whether it's on the same matters or other matters? That I don't know, but I'll get an answer.
You could,
So why don't we-
you could also amend the $65 an hour agreement to include legal consultation.
Yeah, I think, you
I
know.
mean, if you must,
I'll
you
look-
must, you know.
I'll look into it for you, just so you make sure it's worded the
So-
right way.
Do you
I know
want
it's
to table
been-
this until we get?
Well, no, I mean, we could always come back and recall and amend it at a future meeting, because I don't think we need to table it.
Did you adopt 2023-14 already?
No.
Oh, okay.
We didn't adopt
You could table
2023.
that one, and the other one could be a possible recall amend if
Well-
necessary.
I don't necessarily think it's a good idea to table 2023-14.
Let's get it done.
Okay.
I could see if you do your research, then I see a need to do a recall and amend, Mark, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we're gonna need, the, ability to get, be ready,
Up and running.
up and running.
Yeah.
So I think we're just creating problems for ourselves there. But I think you certainly have the ability to do your research, and if we have to recall and amend on the 23rd,
Okay.
we can do that. You're not opposed to that, right, Mr. Lombardo?
Not at all.
Okay. I think that would make more sense. All right, so I made a motion on this
I'll second.
2023 fund, seconded by trustee Pell of the one for the reduced rate on the tax district transition. Seconded trustee Pell, are we all in favor?
Oh, yeah.
Aye.
Thank you.
2023-15,
You adopted that.
we did,
Did.
we did.
That should be,
We do have to go to executive session, so I know there's discussion of various items, but we've done that, and we have a long executive session today, and we have people waiting in the hall for us. So, do you have something that's been pending right now? My advice is that we adjourn this meeting, and we go into executive session for various discussions, personnel and legal matters, so.
I'll second that.
Seconded trustee Warner, all in favor?
All right.
Okay, have a great day, everybody.